we've noticed a flurry of denials in relation to a story that originally stated that the chief director of the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources at a parliamentary committee meeting on July 10, 2023, said that the Ghana Police Service procured the services of landguards to reclaim and protect its lands. Now, MP for Tamale North has been commenting on this development for the past few days on his social media page, where he begins to even ask about the type of company that was being contracted and whether the armed forces, the Ghana Police Service, and other agencies of state contracted this land guard to do any work for them. So I've called Alasan Suhini for his thoughts on this matter to give us some background on this. So Suhini, thanks for joining us. Good morning.
Good morning, Bernard. Thank you very much, and good morning to the team.
So I must confess that I first saw the story on your Facebook page, so I wasn't really following until I sort of went back. So is it that you were in a committee meeting on July 10 when the chief director of the ministry was testifying, where he made those allegations? What's the background from your perspective on this issue of using land guards to reclaim and protect lands?
Exactly so, Bernard. We were at a committee meeting where the Lands Commission was to brief the committee on a number of things. One of it had to do with the operations of a gentleman known as Jato. And at the meeting, the chief director of the ministry, who represented the minister, disclosed that the said Jato was a gentleman that the ministry had an arrangement with, where he reclaimed government encroached land, and in return, government sits with him to determine the cost incurred and sometimes compensate him with parcels of land from the whole that he has been able to retrieve. In fact, he disclosed that in some cases he's awarded about 50 acres of land, like in the Adenta area where he helped them to retrieve land. He also made the point that the gentleman was set up by the government because usually when government agencies go reclaiming encroached land, there is public outcry. And so government hides behind him. And he also had the capacity, such as media men who help him to douse, public uproar, members of the judiciary who help him when issues of legality come up during his operations. And he has his own security that he usually will deploy on the land. In fact, he disclosed to the committee that in one instance, there was exchange of gunfire between the security of this gentleman and some other encroachers, leading to the death of about 3 people. But the chief director boasts that this didn't even become a national discussion because the gentleman had his media on the ground who helped for the matter to be covered up. We thought this was scandalous, and we thought there was a need for us to get to the bottom of it. In fact, he was queried as to why the ministry will not depend on the police and the military for such an exercise, if need be. And that is where he made the point that even the police and the military depend on this gentleman to protect land that are under their disposal. And that he is so powerful that the military and the police also depend on him and, procure his services. So clearly, what you have seen from the police and the military, the Ghana Armed Forces and the police, the denials you have seen from them, speaks to the allegation that was made by the chief director. I've seen some people misconstrue it to mean that the Ghana Armed Forces is suggesting that I lied, or the police is suggesting that I lied, without reading even the publications that have come from these two institutions. Because clearly, if you read the press releases, you will see that they are making the point that if the chief director made the assertion that they depend on this gentleman to protect their land, it is untrue, and that they have the capacity to protect their own land.
Now, was this testimony, hold on, was the testimony of the chief director, Mr. Agbesinyale, Patrick Agbesinyale, was it on the record?
Yes, it was on the record. It was on the record, and it is part of the report that the committee is working on currently. It was not like a side discussion. It was on record.
Did the committee ask him to provide any proof of the claim he made?
So the committee demanded to see the contractual arrangement that the ministry has with the said JATO, and the terms and conditions of that contract, and how that service was procured. So we are still waiting for the ministry to provide, these documents, these information that we have requested from the ministry.
Did he tell? I'm coming. I'll come to you. I'm just trying to lay some fun. Did he tell the committee for how long this arrangement with this person had existed? So, for example, do you know under which minister the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources started engaging the services of this person?
So at the committee hearing, he did not say, but he suggested that that arrangement had been in existence for a long time. But the statement that was issued yesterday by the ministry, signed by the same chief director, revealed that this arrangement with the ministry started in 2012. That arrangement with Enoch Holdings. This time, he referred to the company of the gentleman, Enoch Holdings. Remember, at the committee hearing, there was no mention of Enoch Holdings, an institution. It was this gentleman who is largely known as the landguard, in Greater Accra. But in the release yesterday, signed by the same chief director, he made the point that the arrangement with the ministry is with Enoch Holdings, and that this agreement dates back to 2012. Then my checks at the Registrar General has revealed that by 2012, Enoch Holdings was not a registered company. Enoch Holdings only got registered in 2014. So it cannot be true that the ministry went into an agreement with Enoch Holdings belonging to JATO 2 years before Enoch Holdings was incorporated. That is another lie, for want of a better word. If you want to believe the military and the police that they don't depend on the services of Enoch Holdings or JATO, clearly the date, regarding the procurement of Enoch Holdings by the ministry is also a proof of the inconsistencies from the chief director and the ministry.
But does that not...
That is why it is important that we get the terms and agreements.
Yeah, but does that not weaken the whole case? Because your main issue was based on the testimony of Mr. Agbesinyale, who is the chief director. Right. And by the way, Parliament is a house of records, so whatever he says to a committee is supposed to be under oath, I believe. Right. So that if what he says is found to be a lie, he's in trouble. Now you're saying that after he testified and then you went out to repeat what he said, he sent out a press statement which appears to be backtracking or possibly shifting the goalpost. That's the impression I get from the press statement. So in a sense, you are throwing doubt on the credibility of the same Mr. Agbesinyale. But I'm saying that does that not then weaken your overall case? Because if the person on whose testimony you're basing all this crusade is now proving to be inconsistent in his testimony by his press statement, then it means that what you are basically saying has no legs to stand on.
No. One, if there are inconsistencies, then possibly it is because there is something that is to be hidden. There is some unholy arrangement, details of which may not be palatable. And that is perhaps the reason why there are these inconsistencies. The first one relating to the police and the military, mind you, was to be a justification for the ministry's engagement with this gentleman. To say that the ministry is not the only guilty party here, if there's any guilt, because even the police and the military depend on his services. They have denied that. In the statement that he issued, he did not categorically deny the engagement. The only thing he has done is to replace the name of the person engaged with the name of the person's company. So he has not actually shifted the goalpost that much. All he has done is to replace the name of the person involved with the name of his company, and to agree or to restate that indeed the ministry has a contract with him. But there again, he says that the contract predates him as chief director of the ministry, and that the contract was entered into in 2012. And I have contrary evidence that shows that that couldn't be the case, because in 2012, the company had not yet been incorporated. So Bernard, my view and the view of my colleagues on the minority side especially is that there is more to this case than we are being told. And it is surprising that the ministers, 3 of them at the ministry, have left this matter for the chief director to remain inconsistent in the narrations that he gives.
So, Suhuyini, the committee is asking for what now? Because clearly the statement that the ministry sends is not necessarily congruous with the original testimony as you have made us believe. Is it the committee that is asking for further and better particulars of this arrangement, or it is you as the deputy ranking member of this committee?
On record, the committee requested for better particulars from this entire arrangement. And I'm saying that it is not the case that the 2 narrations by the chief director are different from each other. The only difference is the name change. The only difference is the name change. The name of the person replaced with the name of his company. And so the request by the committee members, which is on record, was that we wanted to know the details of this arrangement with this gentleman, or if you want to speak to the statement that has been issued, his company, Enoch Holding. We want to know the terms and conditions of that particular arrangement. But mind you, Bernard, if you look at Act 999 of the Vigilantism and Other Related Offences Act, which was passed in 2019, Section 7 proscribes the use of landguards. It outlawed it. And so it is befuddling that you will have the ministry suggest that a company can be legally registered to engage in an activity that has been outlawed.
Yeah,
but that is what
it depends. It depends on the.
It
depends on the time the company was registered, because the law was passed in 2019. But if the company was formed in 2014, then at least they had 5 years of doing legitimate work until 2019. No,
I agree. But their legitimacy, or the legitimacy of their operations in relation to that particular job will cease to be legitimate as soon as the law is passed to outlaw what they deal in. I hope we will not disagree over that. Clearly, in 2014, if there was no law proscribing landguardism, and he registered the company in 2014 to provide those services, it would have been legal. But once Act 99 came into force, he could not have continued operating, on a legal basis. And that is why we need to find the contract that the ministry has with him. For all you know, that contract was not even entered into in 2012, as suggested by the chief director. For all you know, the terms and conditions are not, beneficial to the state. For all you know, the terms and conditions, as narrated by the chief director, may be promoting lawlessness.
All right. Can't the committee invite Mr. Jatto to come and testify before it? To just get his side of the matter and say, look, there's an allegation that you are working for the ministry, the military, the police, and other agencies of state, and that you are a land guard. Come and speak for yourself. Within your standing orders, is that allowable? Or must he be, or that can only be done after a contract has been cited, as in he needs capacity? I just want to understand your standards. Can you invite anybody and say, come and talk to us, or you need to establish a basis for which you invite him?
It is the case that we can invite Mr. Jatto, but this is a process we have started. We first want to introduce that contract to the committee. And once that contract is introduced, we can now invite him as a service provider to the ministry to speak to the terms of that contract. And that is why we are focused now as members of the committee on the ministry providing us with that contract, because the ministry, we provide oversight. Our oversight is over the ministry. Let me put it that way, and not over a private entity, any holdings or Jatto. So, if the ministry procures the services of a service provider, and we have issues with it, our first point of call is the ministry. It is when we have enough information from the ministry and we want additional information, then we can fall on the service provider that the ministry has engaged.
All right. So just to be clear, you are waiting for the ministry to provide further and better particulars on the kind of contract they have with Mr. Jatto's company, Anyok Holdings, after
Absolutely.
which you will know what to proceed, how to proceed.
Exactly so.
All right, thank you. That was Alasan Suini, MP for Tamale North. So 10th July, the Chief Director of the Ministry of Lands appears before the committee. He makes statements, and we haven't. You see, I don't have a record of that statement, so we are reading the publications that came out of that committee meeting. All right, and Suini believes, as does the Daily Post and other newspapers who published this, that the Chief Director, Professor Besinyale, had actually said that Mr. Jatto had been contracted by the ministry and other state agencies. All right, the police and the soldiers come out and say it's not true, and that they believe that what Mr. Suini is putting out is not the right reflection of what the man said in the committee. Now, the man at the ministry then sends out a statement which is trying to tidy up whatever he said in the committee and opens another set of questions that Suini is now asking for the full contract. Mm-hmm. So the committee says, let the ministry supply us with the contracts they had with this person. Then we'll proceed from there. I think that's fair enough on the committee side. Yes. But on the side of the chief director himself, he seems to be in a bit of trouble, because now he's given a testimony to a committee, which is a house of record. Mm-hmm. And then he sent out a statement which, according to those on the committee we've spoken to, mm-hmm. is incongruous. Mm-hmm. All right. So where does the onus lie now? Who next has to come and bail themselves? The police say it's not true. Mm-hmm. The soldiers say it's not true. We don't know this guy. We don't work with anybody. We can do our own work. So it looks like Professor Besinyale has a few. So he probably needs to say, okay, let me produce the transcript of Parliament, produce the transcript of what I said. Because his new statement seems to be suggesting that he's been misquoted or something.
Here's what the statement he issued subsequently says. Mm-hmm. It says, government does not engage land guards, mm-hmm. Lands Ministry. So this statement was issued by the Chief Director, Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, and is dated the 17th of July, 2023. And it says, the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, by this press release, refutes the allegations made by the Daily Post newspaper and the Ghana Web online news platform on the 17th day of July 2023 mm-hmm. on a purported statement made by the Chief Director of the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, captioned, Chief Director at the Lands Ministry reveals Ministry of Lands, military and police have been contracting land guards, and government agent engages services of land guards, Chief Director of Lands Ministry, respectively. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The ministry would like to set the record straight that government, and for that matter, the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, does not contract the services of landguards in its operations. However, the ministry, through its agency, the Lands Commission, legally engaged the services of ANOC, or is it INOC Holdings Limited, a registered company limited by liability, to assist in reclaiming encroached government lands. This engagement has been in effect since 2012. The statement says, we wish to categorically, the statement says, state that government, and by extension the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, employs legal processes to reclaim all encroached state lands. And I must say that subsequent to this, there was also a statement from the police denying the same, and then also the Ghana Army. Now, you want to say something?
Before that, I think one of the main issues here is whether we are all saying the same thing when we say a land guard. Because you see, the ministry is claiming that they legally engage the service of this company to do a job. Right? Now, the description land guard has been brought into the picture by Suhini. So I feel one of the things that needs to be done is that the ministry needs to ask for the transcript of that engagement with Parliament. What did the prof actually say to the committee? Okay, because the MP is saying that the ministry uses land guards, and the police and the army are also implicated in using a land guard. Now, the ministry is saying we use the services of ANOC company, but they are not describing them as land guards.
But you get me? Just read a police statement to help the discussion.
Yes, the police statement.
Ghana Police Service refused claims of using land guards to reclaim and protect the lands. Paragraph 1 says the police administration has taken notice of an online news story published on www.myjoyonline.com, in which the chief director of the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources at a parliamentary committee meeting on July 10, 2023, is alleged to have stated that the Ghana Police Service procures the services of land guards to reclaim and protect its lands. Paragraph 2 says the ministry would like to categorically state that this claim is false and unfounded and should be treated with the contempt that it deserves. Paragraph 3 says the police service has not on any occasion engaged the services of land guards to reclaim or protect its lands. In fact, on the contrary, the service has in recent times intensified its land guard operations in communities affected by the activities of these land guards. And this renewed effort will not stop until perpetrators of such illegal activities are brought to justice. Paragraph 4, which is the final paragraph, says, we wish to assure the public that the police service, working in partnership with other security agencies, remains committed to upholding the rule of law and ensuring public safety and security at all times. And we will continue to count on the support of the good people of Ghana in this regard. And it's signed by Grace Ansa Akrofi, who is Assistant Commissioner of Police, Director of Public Affairs.
So, Sky, my point is that every official statement we've read still rests upon whether this company is a land guard company. The ministry statement says we don't engage land guards, but we do engage this company. The police say we don't work with land guards, but they don't refer to this company's name. So I'm saying that to solve this problem, what was the official record of what the chief director said to the committee, for which reason the minority is saying that they use land guards? You see, because the basis of all this discussion is that land guardism is outlawed by our constitution, our laws. If a state agency goes into an agreement with a company that is considered to be a land guard company, that is illegal. Now, we have not seen the business operation license of this company. And I doubt if you will see under business operation land guards. So this is my thing. What did the prof say to the committee to lead them to conclude, at least the minority side?
There must be the voice, right?
That's my point. And you know parliament work. Once you appear before a house of record as a chief director, there's the audio and there's also the transcript. And then there's also the recording. I think that the statement the chief director issued is okay, but it's not enough.
Okay, so
let me take it from
before you proceed further, there's another statement. Let me
There's another statement.
Apparently, there was an earlier statement or appointment letter. Which appointment letter was signed by our good friend John Peter Mau? Appointment of INOC Holdings Limited to repossess all government encroached lands. Right? Now, if this statement is to be believed, it's dated June 21, 2018, and it has what appears to be a signature of the Honorable Minister. It is on the letterhead of the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, and it's addressed to the Managing Director of INOC, as you pronounce it, Holdings Limited, Accra. And it says, "Dear Sir, appointment of INOC Holdings Limited to repossess all government encroached lands. Government of Ghana has acquired various parcels of land compulsorily through executive instruments for various purposes over the years. Most of these lands have been severely and wantonly encroached upon across the length and breadth of the country. Now, the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources strongly objects to this unfortunate development and has therefore resolved to re-enter all such encroached lands nationwide. By this letter, you, Messrs. INOC Holdings Limited, are hereby authorized to generally re-enter and secure all encroached lands belonging to the government of Ghana. You are kindly requested to liaise with the ministry on your terms of engagement." And this goes on to say many thanks, signed, as I stated much earlier, by the Honorable John Peter Amewu, Minister.
Have you confirmed that this is authentic? Because I have a story on our own website, dated September 6, 2019, September 5, 2019. We have not contracted anyone to reclaim government lands, lands ministry. I'm going to read that story. The Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources has denied employing the services of one Clement Jato to reclaim government lands on his behalf. Mr. Jato, who claims to have been contracted by the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, has allegedly been terrorizing citizens, residents in some parts of Accra with the help of landguards. So now I think with the help of the self-acclaimed contracted staff of the ministry was on Wednesday called out by landowners around the UPSA after he led a team of military men and landguards to pull down their structures. But in a Citi News interview, PRO of the ministry, Abraham Otabil, insisted that the ministry did not have a working relationship with Mr. Jato and will adopt every means to ensure the matter is settled in an appropriate manner. Quote, "The lands minister has not hired a land guard to undertake an exercise. For us, we are a ministry of a noble, I don't know if I'm reading this right. And any transactions we go into, we make sure we do it on behalf of the good people of Ghana. So we want to reiterate the claim that the land minister has not contracted a contractor called Mr. Jato to hire land guards to undertake a demolition exercise. We will not look on for that to continue. The ministry will look into the matter and ensure that there is sanity in the system, because the land sector has to do with regulations, and we have the responsibility over the transactions in the country." Then here's a background. UPSA tussle over land leaves one person in critical condition. A tussle over a land supposedly acquired by UPSA left one person in critical condition on Wednesday after he was run over by a car. According to the university, some persons suspected to be land guards were seen destroying aluminium sheet fence around the land. The head of legal services of the university, Fortunate Few, in an interview with Citi News, argued that the land had been registered in 2006. Hence, the university is determined to protect its property despite the threats. But the man accused of being a land guard has refuted the tag, arguing that he is a government official tasked to reclaim state lands. Quote, "I am in charge of government lands reclamation. This is a state land acquired by an executive instrument. I am in charge to identify and reclaim any state land that has been acquired and has been encroached on by individuals and organizations." He alleged that the UPSA is not a legitimate owner of the land per the Search in Lands Commission records. Hence, they were encroaching on the government land. So you read a 2018 story.
Yeah.
I read a 2019 one, and it goes on and on.
Yeah,
and
but
on
you
and
see,
on.
the looking at it with the eye of a law person,
Yes.
or a person with legal background. You see, the story about this Jato guy did not make any reference to the letter appointing allegedly INOC, or is it what's the name of that? INOC.
Yeah,
or INOC?
but it's the
INOC.
same. It's his company.
Is that his company?
Yes, it's his company.
Yeah, but it was not mentioned in the story. You will note.
Which of the stories?
The story that he read, he just said that he, Jato, he's been contracted to do ABCD.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
He says he's working for government.
Uh-huh. But what I'm saying is that the story doesn't make any reference.
No, but there's public record of him
having a working
on this station.
He's told us. You see, this is the thing. The man,
even on
he doesn't call himself a landguard. So you notice the Citi story said he came with military and landguard. So the man himself identified himself as somebody that government has contracted to do a job, and that the government had a problem and contracted him to do that work.
Which would then give basis.
That's why I'm saying that all of what we are saying, it rests on the testimony of Mr. Agbesinyale. Because you see, if the chief director, there are two things. If the chief director is describing the person as a landguard, we have a problem. Do you understand? Number two, the ministry's PRO in 2019 said...
Maybe he used this as a popular descriptive.
Yeah, but landguard is a term of art in our law.
I know.
So you cannot go to parliament and call somebody a landguard.
Which is where his problem, Agbesinyale's problem is. But for me, okay, the bigger problem is not whether he was referred to as a landguard or not. The bigger problem is that it has taken parliament this long to catch up.
True.
With this.
True.
Now, I have always been on this trajectory of oversight. And this again exposes the lack of oversight we have in this country. Because you have referenced stories from as far back as God knows when.
2018, 2019.
In 2022, after the Ideal College incident, which was very popular because of the unsavory incidents that were captured on camera of those young boys and girls.
Yes.
The deputy minister of this same ministry did a press conference to explain the relationship they had with the implementing company that carried out that exercise. Honorable Benito Usubio.
Yes.
If I find the story, I'll read it for you.
So
I'm coming.
To the extent that he works for or with government is not in doubt.
That's not in doubt.
It should not be in doubt.
There is a very long chain of it.
Yes.
Now,
and he has admitted it.
Yes, where my concern, I don't have a problem. Where my concern lies again is how come it has taken officialdom this long? Because, like you said, now the argument is over whether this is a landguard company or not.
Whether it's legitimate
because
business
legally
or not.
In this country, you cannot have a company that does landguard.
Exactly.
Two, the army statement is very clear. The army says they can protect their own lands. But perhaps the question that should have been asked alongside the police is, what determination is made by them when they are asked to provide supporting services
for land which is not theirs?
For land which is not theirs.
Very good
but
question.
It's reclaimed by this entity.
Wonderful.
Other than that, the question then that will be asked is, when INOC Company Limited was set up, is it a private security firm? Because I can read a statement from the Land Commission who say that they have contracted this company because they do not have the resources and the logistics to reclaim or repossess all state lands because there are too many. This company does.
Good.
So what exactly is the nature of the resources and logistics this company has?
Wonderful.
Is it a licensed private security company? Because then we would know are they allowed to carry arms?
What is the categorization
of their registration? Now, the fact that last I checked, the Lands Commission is a state agency. That means that payment for this is budgeted for from the main ministry somewhere. So this would, by one way or the other, make its way into Parliament. All these years that this company has provided service, how have they been paid?
Good question.
For me, there are bigger questions to be asked.
Yes.
It's not just about whether landguard this or landguard that. And I'm happy that the committee, or parts of it at least, are now saying, can we see your contract? Because then, how have they always been paid?
Very good.
How do they pay the agencies that they work with? How do they represent themselves when they show up at the SWAT unit of the Ghana Police Service, for instance, and say, we are INOC Holdings. This is a letter of authorization from the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources. We've been asked to go and reclaim ABC land. So you are working under my command. Is it even legal?
And who's in charge of the operation?
Yeah, is it even legal? Because, like I said, we have records.
Yeah.
So most of these operations happened in the public domain.
Yes.
There were pressmen there. There are statements, all kinds of things with a long chain. In fact,
And then to help us, just a direct version, ECG say they are collecting debt.
yes.
When ECG goes out to collect debt, they go with the police. So I'm sure the ECG MD writes to the IGP.
Yes.
And says, based on our mandate as the people who are custodians of meters,
Yes.
we are planning to do a revenue reclamation exercise.
Yes.
And based on the police availability, police will provide support for the ECG task force. Okay. So to make this easy for people, it's as if the ECG says, I want to reclaim meters from houses that people are not paying.
So I've hired Benadavle.
And he's hiring a company run by somebody. And then the company now has to go with police, with the ECG, to reclaim the land. So the question you ask is a very critical question. Is the company security, or do they have intelligence in land finding so that the police are the ones who then enforce?
The Lands Commission.
Do you understand what I'm saying? So that's what I'm saying. That part of the question goes back to the people who originally contract them. Between the Ministry of Lands and Lands Commission, what service is this company provide? Because in some of the instances reported, they go with police. At least in the report in the Ideal College matter. And I think the UPSA one.
Yes.
So if they go with police and officials of whichever ministry they are going with,
Yes.
what role are they playing in the transaction?
I can explain the role according to the minister.
In that press conference?
Yes. This is Citi Newsroom. I'm reading from Citi Newsroom.
This is what date? What date?
I can't find the date.
So this is the Benito press conference?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry. So the Deputy Minister for Lands, sorry, I'm reading from a Man FM. Sorry.
Yeah, but read the full story.
Yes, I am.
Yes.
The Deputy Minister for Lands and Natural Resources in charge of lands, Benito Usubio, has confirmed the ministry's engagements with the director of Messrs. INOC Holdings Limited, Clement Jato. According to him, aside Mr. Jato supporting the committee in their work, he was specifically contracted to help retain or reclaim government lands.
So help retain or reclaim government land.
Why can't police do that job? I will get to that. Quote, he also supports the committee in their work. He was contracted to help retain whatever has been reclaimed. Once you retrieve the land from the encroachers, it is important to put it under protection. Otherwise, the encroachers will be back again. And that is why he's been engaged to do that work. So the question of what exactly his company does, is it a security company? Is it a protection company? What do they use in providing the protection? Because again, if you're using police to provide protection, why can't the ministry simply write to the police and say, we have land here, provide protection for us? Why do you need a private entity in the middle? Let me finish. He supports us and protects the land, Honorable Benito added. He defended the demolition of some walls and temporal structures on a parcel of land at Mempasem,
Same place.
stressing that the ministry's contractor had the legitimacy to protect the said land from encroachment. Quote, in recent times, there have been disturbances at Mempasem relating to government's attempt to recover state lands, which have been encroached upon by unauthorized persons. It must be stated that the Land Act, 2020 Act 1036, Section 236 frowns on encroachment on state lands and criminalizes such acts. The Land Commission, as the managers of public state lands under the 1992 Constitution under Section 258, is performing its statutory functions to recover the encroached state lands, he said.
So the ministry in a public conversation have owned this process.
Yes.
So your first point is a legitimate point. Parliament has come late to the party.
But they have come.
And they shouldn't act surprised about this.
Because there's a long history.
So that's why I keep going back to the point about if Mr. Agbesinyale's testimony is what is making this a new story. Because Benito and co have admitted that they use INOC to do a certain job.
Yes.
Never in their description have they called him a land guard.
guard.
In the letter purportedly signed by him, they didn't refer to him as a land guard. So throughout the records, the land guard claim has not come in until this committee hearing on the 10th. Sky, you see my argument. So I'm saying that. And this man is speaking under oath. So what did he tell the committee? Number two, the committee on its own can invite everybody. They can invite the man and say, dude, we've seen your name on some records. You have been working for the ministry in various capacities. What is your registration? Or in fact, they don't even have to call the guy. They can go to the Registrar General's department and get the person's registration
Certificate.
and then compare to the contract as he's asking for. Whether the job that the ministry gave him to do and the committee is in line with their levels of expertise.
But it's even legal.
Then hold on. The police themselves have to also come and answer, because the police say they don't contract land guards.
Yes.
But they don't work, but they are.
But are they contracted?
So, yes. So what are the situations under which police can get involved in land issues?
Land reclamation
Issues.
with private entities.
So is it the ministry that brings the police, or the private entity that brings the police and brings them together? Who leads that process? Again, the military themselves, in their statement, they say that they can protect their own lands. Nobody's saying you let land guard protect your land, but do you hire out your services or your men and women to work with private companies? Under what circumstance is that legal?
Which is why I'm saying Parliament has come late to the party, but they have come.
They are there.
And
They should do a very exhaustive job. You see, because
But how can they, Sky, what can they do? What should Parliament do?
Sky.
So there's a committee in Parliament that has started asking for information. There seems to be a lot of moving parts. Ministry of Lands Commission, INOC, police, military, chief director. In your view, what should Parliament do to resolve this matter?
So, first of all, the suggestion is that the statement that is forming the basis for all of this interrogation came during a committee hearing, which would mean that, well, normally these committees don't sit in public, unless maybe this one they sat in public. I don't know the details of how the sitting went, but it would seem that the media guys have done some reports on it. So either a member of the committee brought the information to them, or they had access to the meeting.
Yeah.
Now we need to hear exactly what he said,
Thank you.
so as to form a basis for going further. So if a member of the committee, the deputy ranking member of the committee, feels strongly from the interview, he believes that the gentleman told the committee that these guys were land guards generally. So what he says publicly after that doesn't matter.
Okay.
It's what he tells the
what
committee.
is on the record is what we work with. Because if you make a false statement to Parliament under oath, you can be punished.
Do they take oath before they speak to the committee?
Generally, yes. If you are testifying before the committee.
So it depends on the condition under which it was called.
It depends on the condition under which it was called. But then also, even if you are not necessarily testifying, strictly speaking, but you are providing some assistance to the committee, you are not to mislead Parliament. Because as we consistently say, Parliament is a house of records. So if we take the view that what he said actually characterizes this company as engaged in activities outlawed by our statute, then it will seem that there's something to be interrogated there. Now, moving from there, you don't cure that by issuing a press statement to say that this was what you meant. You have to go back to the committee
and say, produce what I actually said.
Exactly.
And don't let it be misconstrued by the media.
Exactly. And then correct the records there. So if indeed he says something that turns out to be false, action can be taken. Now, the second thing is, Parliament passed a law that says no land guards in Ghana.
2019.
Now, if it is true that a member of government or some members of government contracted a company registered to produce or to provide services which are akin to land guardism, the term that Honorable Suhini used, then it will mean that the minister or the people involved must have broken the law. Do you understand?
But does it not depend on when they signed the contract? Because the letter you read from Amewu's side was in 2018. The law for land guard was 2019. So even if, because there are two issues here, the man doesn't call himself a land guard, and I doubt it that his registration at the Registrar General will use that descriptor.
So what exactly does the company do?
Don't worry, that's a question you can find. But I'm saying that even if what he is doing is considered to be land guardism, the time the contract was signed is important in this discussion because the law was passed in 2019. So it became such a problem that in 2019 we've passed a law saying that land guardism is wrong. And I think it will help us to pull out that law and what it says, because I'm sure that law can also describe the activities of a land guard, because land guard is not like a driver, a man who drives a vehicle. A land guard is a series of things. So we may help ourselves by going to the law to say, okay, what does the law describe as a land guard? And then if you compare the activities of this organization to this law, can you say that it is a land guard or not? Then you look at the company's registration as well. Is it security? Is it intelligence? Is it land information systems? Is it land valuation? Do you get me? So there are all kinds of things that are happening. I think the government ministry that engaged this company has a lot more questions to answer.
They should and explain how they've been paying this company.
So the ministry has a lot of questions to answer.
So that's what I'm saying.
Honorable Jinapo and his people. I think
because
pressure is in order.
Because they should not come and be telling us things in the public domain. I think Parliament should.
You think Parliament should?
Yeah, because as for media, you can tell us say anything.
But go to Parliament, the documents.
But when you go to Parliament and you are speaking on the record under oath, then consequences flow from that.
Okay.
Now, there was something I was. If you look at the provisions of the Constitution, if indeed the guy is a land guard and he goes to testify before Parliament, the law as stated in the Constitution is that whatever he goes to tell Parliament, we cannot use that as basis to prosecute him.
But you see, we have not even gotten there yet. We have not even gotten there. What we are trying to do is two things. Ascertain the nature of the contract the ministry signed with this person. And also the nature of business they do based on their registration and their operations. Right? Those two things will then form the basis of what further inquiry needs to be made. Until those two things are found. And I think Sweeney is right when he says, produce the contract you signed with him. Because in that contract, the description of his responsibility will be there. Attach that to what he's registered to do as a business. Now, as a lawyer, when you take those two things, then you can say, Parliament, you have a lot more work to do to either invite the man to interrogate the matters. Because the questions we are asking, these are all matters of record. Do you get me? So you start with matters of record before you come to matters of opinion. So the matter of record is what is on the basis of the contract and what is the company registered to do.
I would doubt very much that knowing the position of the law, even previously, someone will register a company and say
That's why they are disputing the date of registration of the company, 2019 or 2014. So you see,
no, because you know why I'm saying this. Because as far back as the Kufuor time or shortly thereafter, the Langas unit of the Ghana Police Service was formed. At some point, if my memory serves me correctly, the Kofi Boachi was supposed to be one of the people leading efforts to deal with the activities of land guards. So I doubt very much that there will be some official record somewhere.
No, I'm not talking about the record of the company alone. I'm talking about the nature of the agreement signed. Because Sky, if you say, Sky, come and do this for me, and you describe 5 things you want me to do, in those 5 things you want me to do, we can discern what nature of work the ministry was expecting the guy to play. Yes, so I'm saying that contract is what will tell us the nature of business the government wanted the person to perform, whether it is akin to what a land guard is supposed to do or not. That's what I'm saying. Do you follow my logic? So yes, the company registration may not give us the clue, but if you give somebody a job, and the guy says, I was given a job to do. So each time this thing happens, we call and say, I have a legitimate contract. I'm working for the government. So what did the government ask him to do? And that thing the government asked him to do, was it legitimate?
Okay, so let me put it this way. If the company is characterized as an asset management company, right, which then puts it within the domain of someone who is doing a lawful business, would that be a problem?
As in?
Say again.
So you know that there are companies set up basically to manage assets. There are law firms into it. There are private real estate companies into it. There are people whose job is just to manage, for instance, houses of other people. You understand? And landed property and all of that. So if it is registered as that, would that be a problem? Now, the question of what is registered on paper may not necessarily be the issue.
What about what he's asked to do?
Yeah, it is a question of what he actually does with the license. Because you can lawfully be registered to do a lawful business.
And then you could be doing
exactly. You may be acting outside the remit of the license.
Which is why we need to know what he was asked to do in the contract. Which is why I say Suhini's question is legitimate. What he's being asked to do is the base material for all the discussion. Once we see that...
Not his license.
No, what he's been asked to do, once we see that we can proceed from there. And I hope that by what he's saying as a committee member, he is impressing upon the ministry to produce the contract.
Yeah, I think there has to be that demand
Yes.
on the floor of Parliament.